Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our last membership meeting for 2023. I'm going to go back here a minute. I'm going to just correct something here before we get started. All right, we're going to get started with kind of just going over a quick agenda. So approval of our meeting minutes from our last meeting in September. Big topic as expected around the NARP. And then just some reminders for our TLWQS agencies, and then going over our outreach materials. Membership has not changed since our last meeting, but I like to keep a list going up here. So our first step will be approving meeting minutes. And so first, are there any questions at all about the minutes that were provided in the meeting packet? And just as a reminder, we have this set up as a meeting. So if you do have questions along the way, you can go ahead and then unmute yourself and ask questions. Is probably the easiest way to do that. So if there are no questions about the meeting minutes from September 28th, can I get a hand raised or unmute yourself to make a motion to approve minutes?
Motion.
Second by Shanahan.
Okay, so I'm sorry, that was Kyle that made the motion. And who was it that made the second?
Ed Shanahan.
Oh, Ed. Okay, thank you. Right, I'm going to launch our only poll for today. Okay, we have 13 yeses, 0 nos, and 3 abstains. So our motion carries. And we'll move. Okay, so as we've been putting together NARP document components and reviewing different components of the current NPDES permits, I just wanted to put a review together of all of the plants and what their current phosphorus removal activities are and when NARPs are due. And so you can see for our main stem agencies, the majority of plants are due here in 2023. We're going to be doing a single NARP covering all of these dischargers that will be turned in at the end of 2023. But it will also include those that have a due date of 2024, since we only have 2 set for next year. The idea that we would do all of these together as a single NARP for the main stem plants. But as we've been looking at the tributary dischargers, so we have them all listed here. We can see we have a very variety of dates, and this was one thing I knew. We had some plants that were in 2024, but when you look at the whole list, really the majority of them are in 2024, particularly as you pull out the new Lennox plants, which really won't have any NARP implications because these plants are going to be decommissioned as new Lennox is building a regional plant. So that kind of leaves us with 3 tributary dischargers that have NARPs due in 2023, being Lockport, their main STP, Mokina, and the Frankfurt Regional plant. And then we have 3 plants that are minors. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I'm sorry. 2 plants that are minors that don't have a NARP requirement. And then the new Lennox new regional plant does not have a NARP listed in their permit, but as we put the NARP together, that plant will be included as part of the NARP. So one of the things we're working on with some discussions with IEPA is that for the 3 plants that have the 2023 deadline, we will be completing a NARP for those plants with recommendations kind of specifically for those plants because they do have this deadline at the end of 2023. But there will be some tasks that will kind of get pushed into 2024 as part of the recommendations for that NARP. So that we'll have final recommendations, particularly around effluent limits that will be developed or finalized in 2024. So we'll have a NARP that covers all of our tributary plants with recommendations that will come out at the end of 2024. So we've had discussions with IPA on that, and they're comfortable with that. So as long as we're turning in a NARP that has recommendations, it has a clear timeline forward, particularly with the 2024 deadline, to have final recommendations around effluent limits that will satisfy our need for 2023. So we're working on those details right now. One of the things to help us pull together and be able to document as part of the NARP of all of the phosphorus reduction activities that have been going on. We're kind of particularly keying in on like things that have changed since 2018, which is when we kind of started this process. And that's, you know, when NARPs were starting to show up in permits. So we want to be able to document the reduction activities that have been implemented as well up to that point, as well as we have a couple of plants that are implementing phosphorus reduction activities currently, so under construction, and are kind of just getting into compliance on those. So we want to be able to document the reductions that have been occurring and that are planned to occur as part of current permit language now. So we do have a survey out there that I shared with all of our treatment plant operators. We've gotten about half of the surveys back. Really important for us to get the survey completed for all of our plants. If you didn't see an email from me, let me know, or if there's, share the email with whoever the appropriate person is within your agency to do so, and let me know if you have any questions on it. It's pretty straightforward. There's an opportunity to complete information. If you have multiple plants, kind of the last question is do you have another plant? And then you answer the set of questions for your second or third plant. Or in the case of Illinois American Water, you have 5 plants. So that's the longest of the surveys. But this information is really important and it'll help us compile that information about reduction practices, as well as, how you're going to meet those future limits. As far as the NARP document itself goes, we're looking at obviously pieces that will be that cover the whole watershed area, so our whole lower Des Moines watershed area. The components in yellow have been distributed to our operators at this point, or communities that have NARPs in their permits. Actually, all of our operators, all of our treatment plants have received links to these documents that are out for review, the yellow ones. The green ones are ones that should be coming out next. We have because particularly for our approach on both the main stem and the tributaries, we're utilizing the IPS model methodology that was developed through DRSCW in the lower DuPage. When that model was updated, it included, most of northeastern Illinois as far as tributaries go, wadable streams. And so that the way that those targets were developed, it utilized data from many of our tributaries So it is applicable to our tributaries. So we're utilizing a lot of their information as well as components that they have been writing. So mirroring a lot of their components of their NARPs. I'm working through with Stephen and Dina on a lot of that text. And so I should have the next two with a focus on aquatic life and relationships with chloride and phosphorus, potentially out by tomorrow for review. These are the top three there were the longest. It's about 60 pages of document there. But these next pieces are going to be much smaller pieces and hopefully easier to review. And we're reviewing specifically on content or questions you have, not so much on, numbering or ordering, because a lot of that may change as we assemble the full document in the end. Like I said, I did distribute it out to all of our wastewater operators, as well as a couple of consultants that I know work in the area. If there are others who would like to see these documents as well, if you can send me an email, I can send you out the links and add you to the distribution list. We're working on so that summary of TP reduction activities that will really come out of the survey results that I just mentioned. The component on the non-point sources of total phosphorus, so we had participated in the survey work that DRCW and Lower DuPage were doing around leaf litter studies. That's one of the biggest sources for non-point sources for phosphorus. When we're looking, because we're tasked to look at both point sources and non-point sources of phosphorus. And so we're pulling out the information out of that work to put together a summary of those sources and what some of those recommendations would be around making reductions on the non-point sources of total phosphorus. So that really gets into some recommendations around leaf collection activities and street sweeping activities. As far as, so all of those kind of these top portions or components of the document are overarching across the whole watershed area, whole Lower Des Plaines watershed area. And then we're going to break out components for the main stem, and then breaking out components for the tributary dischargers, and then have the implementation and task schedule will then be broken out for each of those sections. And so as we've discussed previously, we worked with Tetra Tech earlier this year as far as putting together a strategy for developing a target for the main stem. Again, we were not able to use the IPS model for the main stem because the IPS model was developed for tributary streams, but in discussions with MBI, and we had discussions with Tetra Tech and MBI on this, we feel that we can take that model and basically upgrade it utilizing large river data, so non-wadable stream data, and be able to kind of end up looking at a smaller subset, so things that are pollutants related to or stressors related to nutrients as a whole. So shortening up the list, because DRCW and Lower DuPage looked at about 200 different stressors. So we're going to shorten up that list and looking at parameters that are related to nutrients, and then upgrade the modeling or statistical work, I should say, not modeling, the statistical work that was done for the original IPS, but doing that with large river data. And some of the challenges there is having enough large river data. So one of the first tasks that is identified for that project will be to look at what the existing data is. So we have our data and other like DNR data that was collected on the Des Plaines itself, but then looking at the Kankakee and the Rock River, as those would be the most similar from a structural standpoint rivers in Illinois that are similar to the Des Plaines. And so looking at what data between IEPA and DNR that's available, and then identifying additional data collection that we would need to do potentially in those watersheds. So we have enough data to run the IPS model for large rivers to then be able to identify that target. And then once we have the target, we'll be looking at the modeling to then develop the effluent limit. So what we'll have in the NARP is, looking at what our current loading is as far as phosphorus on the main stem, and Tetra Tech put that together for us. Really the rationalization for utilizing the IPS model, but upgrading to a large river model, and then discussing how then secondary modeling would be utilized once we have a target to develop limit. So really having all of that discussion as part of the main stem component. And then I actually have the list in another slide, which we've seen before, of what those implementation tasks will be over the next 5-year kind of chunk of time related to the main stem. And then with the tributaries, I do have sent out this morning kind of the total phosphorus, the derivation of that target. And so really getting into detail as to how the IPS model was built to develop thresholds for all of the different pollutants. And it really goes into detail about how those, how that target specifically or threshold for TP was developed. Again, this is language that's coming out of the NARP from DRCW Lower DuPage. Again, we're using that same tool and we're applying it to our tributary streams. And then we have some next steps for really developing that effluent target. And so what will be included for those essentially 5 permits that have a 2023 deadline is kind of a list of next steps for developing that effluent target. Because of just the way that our tributaries and dischargers are distributed across our tributaries, doing the type of modeling that was done by DRSCW would be really, really expensive and not necessarily be as really needed. I mean, when we only have one treatment plant on a stream, or in the as most of our tributaries, they only have 1 or 2 treatment plants on them, and running that same level of modeling is incredibly expensive and may not necessarily get us any better information than just using, we have in-stream data that we can be comparing to. And so that's what we're really looking at, is how to utilize the modeling that DRCW did, the fall 2 modeling they did, and looking at comparisons between, or similarities between our tributaries and their tributaries to be able to come up with, what that effluent target would be, and then how that language would look in a permit. But that we would like to do all as a single step and include that for 2024. So having all of that language and target development done as a whole for tributaries. And since we have, like I said, the majority of our tributary dischargers having that NARP due in 2024, we're going to write in for the tributaries for the dischargers for 2023 that this next step of the effluent target will be achieved by the end of 24. And as I said in our discussions with IEPA, they were comfortable with that. We're obviously putting a lot of effort in, in all of these other components. We have a path forward about how we're going to do that, but having a little bit more time to be able to fully look at all of the data. And we're still waiting from some of that data analysis, particularly on the tribs outside of Hickory Creek. We're still waiting on that data back from NBI. So having a little bit more time to come up with a target that everybody is comfortable with and understands. They were comfortable with us pushing that into 2024. So for the components that we have out already, I just kind of pulled up table of contents wise. So it's a lot of the background information, all of the information about where and what our impairments are, as far as all of our 303D listed waters, and what those impairments are, and identifying where our phosphorus impairments are across the watershed. So we have lots of maps and graphs on that, and a lot of the watershed characterization information, and how that relates to the work that we're doing. The section that went out this morning was that derivation of the threshold, really getting into that description about how the IPS model developed those thresholds across the board, but then specifically for TP. So like I said, this first document that I sent out earlier this week is quite long, but there are a lot of figures and graphs in it. And the one that went out this morning is much shorter. I think it's only about 8 pages. So hopefully not too bad to get through. As far as recommendations, we did look through this slide in particular at our last meeting, and it's been distributed as part of the memos from Tetra Tech, but just as a reminder of kind of what recommendations will be looking like for the main stem display. So all the things that we just talked about as far as doing additional data collection, doing the work on the IPS tool and the updates for that, and then the Qual 2K type modeling that we would be looking at for the main stem. And then in addition to that, just the work group participation and outreach and things like that. So similarly, with specifically for the tributary dischargers with the 2023 deadline, so some of those similar type recommendations as far as work group participation and continuing with the bioassessment surveys and work there, outreach, and this outreach on both sides will be really looking at, particularly on the non-point source side of things. There's work that we can continue to do to support reductions on the non-point source side, helping communities around that leaf collection, leaf management side of things. And then we'd have a specific deadline in there with the as far as POTW effluent limits by the end of 2024 as a holistic target for our tributary dischargers. Again, this we shared at the last meeting. This came out of the memos from Tetra Tech. This kind of getting specifically into implementation schedule for the main stem dischargers. I'll be putting together a similar table like this for the tributary dischargers from the 2023 deadline that will really be shorter in that it'll go through 2024, that we will have effluent limits by the end of 2024. And then as part of that 2024 document, it will have a implementation schedule and list of tasks and how those things will get implemented into that next 5-year chunk of time. So that's where we're at as far as I said, as far as implement or NARP related things go to. So if there are any questions at this point, please feel free to unmute. And I did see a chat that Albert submitted in, so I will include you, Albert, on our distribution for those documents. I can get that done as soon as the meeting is over. Any questions though around this, or anybody else who has not seen these documents who would like to be a part of that review? Like I said, I keyed in on particularly those who have NARP requirements in their permit or who would be potentially seeing the results of the NARP in their future permits. But if there's anybody else who would like to be a part of that review, again, just let me know. Quick update, our 2023 bioassessment is in the books. We got all of our data collection done. So we have 28 sites. We reviewed this in the past, so 25 sites on the main stem, one on the Kankakee, and then looking at Ship Center Canal and I&M Canal, as those are major inputs to the main stem. So we got information from both of those inputs. So collected 2 fish passes at all of the sites, mackerel and vertebrates, 8 water chemistry passes, 1 pass of sediment chemistry for all of the sites. And then we also collected fecal coliform at 5 stations along the disciplines this year, is more related to our MS4 type reporting. So all of that was completed by the end of October. We'll be set next year. We'll start working on planning for next year to do the upper half of our section of the lower disciplines, which will include mostly main stem sites and then sites on, I think there's 4 tributaries in the upper portion of the watershed that we'll be including stations on as well. So that'll be next year's round of bioassessment. Again, we have information related to chloride TLWQS on the website. We will have, so we discussed this in the past, had combined the chloride committee for the lower disciplines with the Chicago Area Waterways Chloride Work Group, since that's all they are focused on, our TLWQS items. They will be holding a joint meeting. So we have a joint meeting, and that is coming up in December, on December 13th. Hannah will be sending out announcements for that. I know she sent out some reminders on that. I believe we're going to be holding this meeting in person. It'll be down in Homewood. Again, we're doing a quarterly meeting jointly with that group. I know we're gonna have a lot of discussions around liquids in particular, but really the idea of kind of trying to bring people together in person, be able to share experiences, but TLWQS related. Today is the day you should have all of your equipment calibrated by and documentation for that calibration, and all of the staff training was the deadline for that within the permit is November 30th. So those are kind of the things right now. Really thinking about making sure you have all of your documentation processes set up as we go into this next winter season to help assist with when you have to put together your annual reports for next year, or that'll be due next year. And I know we'll be looking at trying to get those annual reports in early or next year, probably by the end of June, as because we'll be into year 3 next year. We'll need to be submitting a progress report across all of the dischargers, or all the permittees, excuse me. So we'd like a little bit of time to be able to compile all the information from all of our individual permittees to be able to put together a single kind of summary of what has been going on for TLWQS. So having all of your documentation set up and kind of tweaked based off of any things you learned from last year will definitely help you in putting together that material for next year. If you have any questions or would like some review on anything, Hannah and I are always available to sit down with folks and talk through any questions that you might have. We talked a little bit about this last time. I still have some slots available for the Salt Smart and You exhibit. It's wrapping up at Joliet next week. There's 8 panels. They're 2-sided, English and Spanish. You don't need to use all 8 of them if you don't have the space, but we'd love to get them into some other community spaces, and whether that's your local library, your municipal center, if there's other places that would make sense within your community. We do have a sign up for it at the website, or you can reach out to me. We can get the panels to you. We have cups, we have bookmarks to go along with it. So please let me know if that's something that you would be interested in getting to your community this winter. Like I said, there's page on the website, and you get to it right from the front page, homepage of the site, that you can go in and update or request the exhibit. Here's just a quick look at the panels that are available. Like I said, they're both in they're English on one panel, and then the backside panel is in Spanish. Would love to get these out. We kicked off the Winter Chloride Watchers program. And when I say we, I mean the Conservation Foundation has partnered with Illinois River Watch to help increase participation in the Winter Chloride Watchers program that they started a couple of years ago up here in the northern part of the state. We held several in-person trainings, as well as we had a virtual training, and then we have one more virtual training next week. If this is something that I would love to have any assistance in advertising this training on our outreach page on the website. You can get to from the bottom of any of the pages. We have some social media posts that you can share with folks. We have the flyer. I put the flyer actually in the meeting announcement, and I believe actually on our Facebook page for Lower Des Plaines, we have a post up about the December 6th training coming up. If you can share and get more folks participating. I think we've been able to, we've trained, I think we've had close to 90 people participate in training. We've had over 60 people sign up for sites across kind of that area that we're working in northeastern Illinois here. So it's definitely been something people have been very interested in. We've talked with the forest preserve districts, and they're helping us out with getting permissions for folks to participate. We've worked with several park districts as far as people having access to streams or ponds through park district land. People can sample anywhere they want. We focus a lot on just safety of sampling. There's a app that folks use to upload the data, so that data becomes available to everybody. It's a great participation activity. So particularly for MS4 communities, if you're looking for other ways to engage with residents on that public participation side, this is a great way to do it, and helping us get the word out to get people trained is a great way to do that. We have lots of winter outreach materials available. I kind of focused a lot on safety this year, and discussing different practices that you might be seeing in your community, whether it's both on the roadside as well as parking lots and sidewalks, really kind of helping people think about all the different reasons why we want to reduce salt and the impacts from salt. So lots of nice social media pieces that Leah puts together every year. Again, if you have other ideas or needs on outreach activities or outreach information that you'd like some help with putting together some graphics for, please let us know. Leah's always happy to work with communities on more specific or detailed topics. We do have a new video that we put together, again, focused on homeowners, on ways to reduce their impacts within their own property. So we have a video on how to make brine at home and utilize with a simple garden sprayer. That's available at the saltsmart.org page on the outreach materials resources page. Again, we have our Facebook page. We'd love for communities to follow our page, share the information we have, or at least utilize this as an example about how to incorporate the materials that we have into your own social media or website. All of our meetings are posted on the Will County Watershed's YouTube channel. You can also get to them from the website itself under the Lower Des Plaines section, and we have the meetings and minutes page that has links to the videos, and Leah gets those posted pretty quickly after our meetings are completed. So any other questions, comments today? feel free to just unmute yourself and speak up. Otherwise, we have our next meeting will be our annual meeting at the end of January. I'll be working with the board shortly on budgets for next year, as well as we'll be holding elections for our board next year. I believe we still have a slot available if there is interest in participating on the board from an at-large position. You can reach out to me or Allison if there's any interest in that.
Just getting back to NARPS briefly.
Yes, Albert.
As I understand, I haven't seen the drafts you have, but as I understand your presentation, you intend to basically follow the DuPage River Salt Creek work and apply that to your watershed. Is that the plan?
As far as like the IPS model and that target, the in-stream target of the 0.28 target, yes.
Well, have you picked out the 2.8 target yet?
Well, it's not really a matter of picking. I mean, that's the in-stream threshold that was developed by the IPS tool. We feel is applicable to our tributary streams because of when that update was done, the latest update of the IPS model was done. It included data from across northeastern Illinois, which included data from many of our tributary streams.
Okay, that's what so
yes.
You believe the 0.28 is applicable to all of Northeast Illinois, at least for tributaries?
At least well, I'll say for our tributaries. Yes, I believe so. For lower Des Plaines tributaries. I know that data was pulled from many of those, not necessarily all of our tributaries, but many of our tributaries. And so we feel that applying that target to the lower Des Plaines tributaries is reasonable. Any other questions from folks? Okay. A motion to adjourn our meeting today. Hand raised. Unmute.
Motion.
Okay. Kyle, and second.
Seconded. Keith, New Lenox.
All right, thanks, Keith.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. Well, okay, so I'm assuming that everybody is good with adjourning. If you have any other questions, please reach out to me directly. Again, if there's anybody on the call here that would like to be included on the review documents, let me know and I'll get an email out to you. Otherwise, everybody have a great holiday season and we will see you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.